attitudes, and the whole interaction to some of them was very negative, and they said, well, we were really, really closed off, and well,
I've always had mixed, I think, you know, on the one hand, there's massive negativity. On the other hand, there's all these things that we in the West have lost, that the Muslims still have considerable amounts of. Community, you know, family is still very strong. Also just social relations. I mean, for instance, you know, you and I have not known each other a great deal of time, and yet, you know, already bonds are formed very quickly amongst the Muslims that don't happen amongst people in the West very often. It's quite rare, and yet it's quite common in the Muslim world. So I think that...
So you think that then Islam is the sort of leveling factor here, which reduces these barriers amongst Muslims?
That's a good question. I think definitely that when you become a Muslim, or being a Muslim, is a very powerful force that is not the same as being a Christian, or not the same as being a Buddhist or a Hindu or some other religion. I think that the brotherhood that exists in Islam is much more powerful than I've seen in other traditions. And that is not to deny that there are communities of Christians that don't have deep brotherhood, but I'm talking about this universal, more global outlook. I think the Amish, for instance, probably have much better community than you'll find almost anywhere in the Muslim world.
Much better support group, and much more of a network.
Absolutely. Right. I mean, you might find in the Swat Valley in Pakistan, or the Hunzas, or you know, or in the Caucasus Mountains or somewhere. But you know, community is a disappearing phenomenon. I mean, some people consider it irrelevant in the informational period, that it was necessary in agricultural societies where you need people to stick together and help each other. But when you have these massive megalithic cities in which you've got this state apparatus, but the state apparatus is falling apart.
Yes, of course.
I mean, and now there's this whole modern, you know, communitarianism, they call it, which is an attempt at reestablishing communities even within inner cities.
There's a new book, Bowling Alone. You read that?
I haven't seen
it. That's by a guy from the East Coast, Putman, who's postulating this whole thing that America is now becoming very different from what it used to be, where there were bowling clubs and you would go bowling and there would be opportunity for bonding.
I actually did read an article
bonding
about
and all of that.
Sure.
So anyway, going back again, the reason I asked about Islam as a leveling
you know what hit me and probably what silenced me is the word leveling. Yeah. Because this, you know, Kierkegaard's, one of his ideas about the nihilistic age that we're in is that it levels everything.
Yeah, no,
and he used it as a very negative term.
No, not quite.
So when you use that word, it kind of silenced me. I don't know if that was the appropriate word.
May not be.
I think
equalizing would be a better word. I think, because I think the reason I asked also was Malcolm had that same experience when when he went on Hajj. What really sort of...
Well, Hajj is a definitely leveling experience.
Yeah, but still, he as much as there was that spiritual bonding which occurs in Hajj and all of that, but to see the humanity interacting with yourself at that level of equality was, I thought, what...
well, this is one of the fascinating, again, you know, one of the conditions that we're finding ourselves in is that provincialism is increasingly becoming detrimental to the human condition, because massive groups of peoples of different backgrounds and cultures are thrust together in mega cities like Los Angeles and Burbank and these places, and suddenly it's, you know, you've got a Korean for a neighbor, or you've got a Vietnamese for a neighbor, and your son might have been in Vietnam, and suddenly it's having to deal with human beings that are very different from yourself. And I think that's one of the things that Islam does to us, is that it forces us to deal with otherness in a way that is not alienating, but is in fact bonding. And what you know, the otherness of color, of language, is broken down by the sameness of belief that transcends whatever differences that people do have at these exterior levels, that ultimately our basic impulses are pretty fundamental. I mean, we're dealing with people that want the best for their family.
Yes.
This is a universal human situation. We're dealing with people that want to live harmoniously, that don't want to be violated or violate others. I mean, I think the vast majority of human beings share some pretty fundamental, basic virtues.
And all religions have the same core of values, more or less, to that extent.
It's just how do we achieve them?
Absolutely.
This is the crisis. I mean, we can all agree, yeah, let's all be human. Right?
Yes, but how do you do that?
How do we become human? And this is where the whole issue becomes problematic, and I think this is where Islam's agenda for humanizing people is so radical.
Well, I don't know whether you would call it agenda. It's a process, I think.
Well, I'm using agenda. See, we're looking at negative terms. Agenda can be a,
Yes.
I mean, Islam does have an agenda, and its agenda is to transform people into kind of crude semblances of Bani Adam or the Adamic species to a true Adamic being, a true human being. I mean, I definitely think
with
that's...
a conscience.
With a conscience.
Right.
And the most radical way of doing that is having people pray together 5 times a day.
Yes, of course, yes.
You know, you're praying in a line, in a rank, with people, a black man is on your right side, a white man's on your left side, a Chinese, you know, and this is something pretty extraordinary.
Yes. No,
and the whole idea of being forced to touch them,
yes.
you know.
Yes.
Which shouldn't be feel forced. It should be a longing or a desire for that closeness and that intimacy that takes place in prayer. So that the social aspect, Ramadan.
Yeah, you know, no, I think there's no question that in all those
and
those
universalizing
practices,
Ramadan. Yes. The idea that we're all 1/5 of the world's population is fasting.
Yes.
1 month out of the year together. I mean, you talk about harmonic convergence.
So, you spent about 10 years in
overseas, and then I came back here.
You came back to Northern California again?
Actually, Southern California.
I see.
And I studied, I was studying homeopathy, and then I was studying, I went into a nursing program and completed a nursing school program. Then I I was working in nursing, and then went back to the university to do a program in comparative religion. So,
how long did that take for you?
Well, altogether it's been about 7 years.
Mm-hmm. So you finished that?
Yeah, I'm actually now going to probably, hopefully next year, be doing some graduate work.
Wonderful. So where are you finding all this time?
Well, it's making time for. I mean, I'm very time conscious. I'm conscious of the hourglass ticking away, so I just try to utilize. Absolutely, man is in loss with time as passage, except for those who don't waste their time.
That's right.
So I just try not to waste time. Time is very valuable to me.
What what sort of relationship now have you got with your parents? Is that all?
Oh, wonderful.
Really?
Absolutely. So both my parents have a great. My sister became Muslim. All of my family now has a very good idea of what Islam is, and I've done it, I think, hopefully in a way that, you know, I'm not condemning them or just I think they all have an idea of what my life's about, and I think all of them they're very impressed with, you know, I mean, it's quite difficult to have successful marriage in this modern 20th century, late part of it in California. And, you know, alhamdulillah, my children are, thanks God,
they
very
go visit
healthy
their grandparents and all of that.
So I think, you know, generally they're very pleased.
Yeah. Well, that's nice. Now, coming back to Islam and, of course, its impact on your own life, which is obvious since you're quite actively engaged in learning and teaching. And now, what difficulties do Muslims have in presenting Islam to the West in a proper way? Because we talked earlier on about how Islam is perceived. We didn't talk about our own role or our own responsibility of how we have either failed or succeeded.
Good points. I think part of it is the fact that I think Islam's misperceived by the Muslims as well. I mean, it's not just a misperception that the Western people have.